latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for October 22nd. Looking at the tropics today then, Epsilon, a major hurricane at this point in the western Atlantic, not too far from Bermuda, although ultimately it should just about miss, although still tropical storm conditions could occur. Saudel is approaching the coast of China and Vietnam. It's a tropical storm still at this point, but it's intensifying. But looking at the Atlantic then, Epsilon there, category 3 at this point. And looks like it's going to peak very soon if it hasn't already. We've also got a small chance of development in the Western Caribbean. We're really looking out for when it enters the Western Atlantic though, for its potential chance of development later on down the line. In the Eastern Pacific, day 171 of hurricane season here, and it's still very quiet actually, nothing at all to talk about. So this area is still very clear of any tropical activity right now. The Western Pacific though is quite active. Saudel there, moving away from the Philippines, now clear over the South China Sea. Massive convection over that system, could be a typhoon soon. And 3 other areas of interest. A 60% chance is the one that we're watching the most though, that's headed towards the Philippines as well. And 2 smaller chances, one of them off Japan and another approaching the Mariana Islands. 40% chance still for that area in the Indian Ocean, which could strike the area in easternmost India and in Bangladesh. So let's take a look at the latest satellite imagery. This is what the North Atlantic's looking like today, and you can quite clearly make out the unmistakable appearance of Hurricane Epsilon. It's a rather large system, winds on the northern side, extending out potentially over 400 miles in some parts, so certainly a very wide wind field on the northern side, not so much on the southern. The Gulf of Mexico looking fairly quiet right now. The Eastern Pacific, a few little blow-ups, but not much going on here. The closest to any tropical development really is that system there on the right-hand side, which is a little bit further north than the intertropical convergence zone there. Some convection blowing up, but no signs of a circulation, so it doesn't look like that's going to be a tropical cyclone. The Western Pacific looks like this. You can see quite clearly Saudel, which is expanding, quite a large system actually, and certainly has the potential to reach typhoon status. Indeed, models suggesting that it could reach category 2 and could strike southern Hainan and then move on to Vietnam. That's what the GFS is currently saying. Whether or not it will still have as much strength by the time it gets to Vietnam is unclear so far. South Pacific, a frontal system moving through Vanuatu, and a lot of cloudiness and rainfall by the looks of things over Fiji and Tonga. The Indian Ocean, you can see that system there blowing up some convection. Not looking that impressive right now, it has to be said, but something to watch out for on day 1 through to day 3. We could see a tropical depression there. Sea surface temperatures look like this. You can see there off the coast of Mexico, still warm temperatures. I've been saying it for a while, it's still the case. We could see late season activity there that could impact the western coast adversely. The Atlantic very warm in the Caribbean Sea, 30 degrees, and where Epsilon is right now, temperatures looking at about 27, maybe down to 26 degrees, starting to decrease. Epsilon is starting to run out of time and should start weakening gradually tomorrow. Looking at the Indian Ocean, you can see there off the Ganges River Delta, still very warm sea surface temperatures there, 30 degrees plus. That's a concern if any system enters that zone just before landfall, could blow up with lots of convection and energy and indeed intensity. Western Pacific still as it is, as it has been all year really, 30 degrees generally in the Philippine Sea, and a warm pocket off the western coast of the Philippines as well, where Saudel is right now. Looking at the anomalies, the Western Pacific still remaining above average by and large, almost completely. Just a slight little area there off the Chinese coast and the Vietnamese coast that's below average, so that's interesting to note. The La Nina effect is still very much there in the Eastern Pacific, and out there in the Atlantic still mostly warm conditions. On October 22nd, 1988, we had Hurricane Joan, which would later be called Miriam as it entered the Eastern Pacific. According to our records, making landfall as a Category 5 in Central America, in Nicaragua, and then moving on into the Eastern Pacific. Pat was also active in the Western Pacific, as well as Tropical Storm Ruby. Pat was making landfall in Hainan. Could mirror what we're seeing in Saudel, actually. Maybe just a little bit, not too much. So the next name on this explosive Atlantic hurricane season naming list is Zeta. Believe it or not, Epsilon is the first storm to peak as a Category 3, assuming it doesn't get any stronger, since Umberto in the Western Hemisphere. In the Eastern Pacific, the next name is Odalis, if we ever get there. The Central Pacific, Hone. In the Western Pacific, Malawi is next, followed by Goni. In the North Indian Ocean, we're still waiting for Gati. In the Southern Hemisphere, the next name on the Australian naming list is Imogen. In the Southwest Indian Ocean, we start off the year, or the season, with Alicia, and in the South Pacific, our next name is Yasa. That's all for now. We'll have another tropical weather bulletin tomorrow night.